Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 8 of What If Naruto Became a Green Lantern. If you guys enjoyed this What If, and want to see part 9 of it, comment down below, and let me know. The like goal for this video is 200 likes. So like this video, to let me know that you're interested in this series, and you want the next part. Check out my new videos of My Hero Academia What Ifs in my second channel, and give it some love as well. Link is in the description. And go ahead, and check out other What Ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. 2 years later. Watchtower. July 20th, 2010. Batman stood before a holoscreen console reading over a report when Hal flew in, landed before walking to him. "Hey Bruce," he greeted. "Hal," Batman said, not bothering to turn around. Hal ignored this and looked over his shoulder to see what his colleague and ally was looking at. "Something happening in Santa Prisca?" Hal asked. Batman sighed and decided to just answer him to see if he would leave him be. "Santa Prisca is the largest producer of the Venom super steroid drug," he said. "I know that, Bruce. I do manage to keep informed on what goes on my home planet," Hal responded, crossing his arms. "Except for at least the last day or so, all shipping has stopped from the plant on the island. However, production of the drug has increased since," said Batman, disregarding Hal's words to keep him on task. "Do you think someone is muscling in on Bane then?" he questioned. "I'm not sure yet. I need more intel before making that assumption," Batman responded. "So, I'm guessing that means you'll be sending that new covert team that's made up of younger heroes like Aqualad and Robin and the rest." Batman turned off the console to look at him with an eyebrow raised behind his cowl. "I was talking with Barry about it. It's actually the reason I wanted to talk to you." "And why is that?" the Dark Knight asked. "I know that you included those who found out what Cadmus was doing into the team, along with Superman's clone Superboy. I know that you also had John's niece Ganaka Miss Martian join," Hal explained. "Would you mind getting to the point?" Batman demanded. Hal put his hands up in a placating manner. "Hey, I just want to know if there's room for one more in this team's roster. As far as I know, there is no set limit with the team at present," said Batman. "Did you have someone in mind?" "As a matter of fact, I do. A Green Lantern from the Space Sector 2813. The one next to ours," said Hal. That stroked Bruce's curiosity a bit. "Since when do you take protégés?" he asked. "He's no protégé. He's 19 years of age, and he's been Green Lantern of his sector for 2 years. He's a brilliant tactician, strategist, and a cunning warrior. He also happens to be our best stealth operative when the need arrives for it," Hal pitched. Batman looked suspicious on that last one. "Since when do you Lanterns know anything about stealth? I always figured you core to be more on the direct side of things. Honestly, up until he showed up, we were lacking in that department. But that's one of the reasons why I think he'd be perfect for this team. He would at least complement Robin on that front," said Hal. Batman nodded, silently agree with that assessment. The team could use another heavy hitter, and a Green Lantern would definitely do that, especially since Superboy's powers are a watered-down version of Superman's. "He would be the oldest of the team, 3 years older than Calder," said Batman. "I didn't know there was an age limit on the team. You selected Black Canary to train them in hand-to-hand combat because she was closer in age than you are, and because she's almost, if not your equal, in the hand-to-hand department," said Hal with a smile. "This would only add to that. Plus, and he would deny this, he happens to be a natural leader when he wants to, but only if he feels like it. He prefers taking orders to giving them," Batman stated. "I wouldn't say that. He has no problem voicing his opinion on any orders he receives. He just won't take the lead unless absolutely necessary," said Hal. The Dark Knight went silent for a bit. Hal knew that he was considering it, but then he noticed that his face turned into a frown behind his cowl. "You're not telling me something," he said. "Well, yeah, I haven't told you his name yet," said Hal, nervously scratching the back of his head. "That isn't it. Don't try to divert me, Jordan," Batman demanded. "Just when I'm about to send the team into their first mission, you suddenly come in with a new recruit that fits the bill and what it needs in just about every field. I know you're not lying about that, but there's something you're holding back." Hal sighed and put up his hands in a placating manner. "Look, Bruce. Yes, there's something I'm keeping from you about him, that's true. But it's nothing you need to be concerned with. It's just something happened recently, and my friend needs to be off FOA for a while. I wouldn't go into specifics, mainly because it would piss him off, and I don't want to do that. If you want to ask him yourself, you can. But I gotta warn you, he won't talk easily. He's not one to be intimidated by anyone," he said, referring to the Dark Knight himself. There was a moment of silence between them. It seemed to last for hours before Batman spoke again. "He's as good as you say." "Better," said Hal with conviction. Batman then turned around and reactivated the holographic computer panel. "What's his name?" he asked. "I will need to start compiling an Earth identity for him," Hal smiled knowing that he got his request approved. That's not going to be necessary. Salak, our Clarisse, is handling the identity for him as we speak. Turning the panel off, Batman turned to him annoyed. I still need his name if we're going to introduce him to the rest of them. They have been together long enough to know their real names outside of work. Hal sighed. He knew that Naruto wouldn't like it, but he had to throw Bats a bone if he was going to get anywhere right now. His name is Naruto Uzumaki. Now can I please go? I need to inform him that everything is set for joining your team. That will do, said Batman, though Hal knew that his mind was already processing even that little bit of information for later. I'm assigning the team the mission for Santa Prisca in 2 days. It will take that much time to plan it out. You have till then to get your man ready. He'll be ready, said Hal. Then you best get going, said Batman. Hal left the control room and entered a Zeta tube that would take him out the tower. Recognize Green Lantern 05, said the computer as he Zeta beamed outside the tower with his field activated and flew towards Ajnin, mentally grumbling at how Batman would be looking at Naruto's name. All this over the Guardians being more paranoid than he is. He thought to himself as he recalled what happened that led to him having to get Naruto to Earth. 3 months ago, Oa, Planetary Citadel. Hal practically burst through the door when he got the call from the Guardians telling all Lanterns who were on Oa to report to the Citadel for an emergency call from Frontier Space. It also mentioned that any Lantern who was on patrol to cease all action to hear it. He and the rest that were on Oa watched with apt attention to the message. Hal especially given who the Frontier Lantern was. This is Queen Island of Betrus, Green Lantern of Frontier Space. My planet is under attack from the Kundians. They have arrived with a massive invasion force, and have the orbit surrounded by 2 battle groups with both of them having a complement of 5 destroyers each. 5 on both fronts, spoke up Kilowog, which made the council pause the video. Probably fighters to complement that number on each, and no telling on how many ground forces they've sent. I'm afraid it only gets worse, Sergeant, said Sade as she resumed the message. I have reason to believe that Ragnar, my brother, is involved in the assault. For certain there are at least 2 members of the Sinestro Corps with them. The Star Sapphires have sent reinforcements, but the Kundians have us heavily outnumbered. I'm sending this emergency message to any who can be of assistance. Please, my people are dying. Implored the recording with island voice on the brink of tears for her people. Hal could see the concern and battle weariness that had already marred her face before the image disappeared. How did the Kundians manage to get to Betrus with fleets that size and not be detected? Hal questioned. The Sinestro Corps must have found a way to use their portals that they used to enter the antimatter universe to get them there. Or the sons of bitches have trans-warp technology or something, said Kilowog. Doesn't matter how they got there, we need to do something. His sentiment was shared with many nods from the Corps. May I remind you all that we have no way to reach Betrus. Even at top speed it would take you all 18 months before you would reach frontier space, never mind the planet itself, said Apple, looking down at all of them. Haven't you guys been building a new ship or something? Hal asked. Anthid sighed. Unfortunately that project, among others, he looked to Appa, have been stalled due to our concerns with the Sinestro Corps here in Guardian Space. Surely there must be something that can be done, said Arisia, stepping forward. However unfortunate, in this situation, the only thing we can do is alert any Frontier Lanterns of the crisis, which has already been done just now, and hope that the Star Sapphires can hold the defense of the planet, said Renaker. Those Lanterns have basic skills at best, said Lair. They do not have the training nor experience to handle this. That is enough. 0112. The Guardians have made our decision as one, Appa declared. With all due respect, Appa, but we have not, said Sade. I agree with Assistant Trainer Lyre. Something must be done. Before Appa could refute that claim, Salak, floating in his usual spot in the center of the chamber, noticed something going off on his console. Excuse me, Guardians, but I have something on sensors, he said. There is a Green Lantern flying towards the direction of the Maelstrom. What full lantern would be headed there? Appa questioned. Ganthid ignored him and looked to Salak. Display the map please, Salak, he said. As if reading his mind, the Clarisse did so, pulling the map up for all to see. Sure enough, there on the map was a green figure in it that resembled the lantern heading to Maelstrom, the border between Guardian and Frontier Space. Which Green Lantern is that? Asked Hal. The lantern's trail starts from Space Sector 2813, said Salak, frowning as he knew who it was. Naruto, said Hal, disbelieving it. Kid's got brass, I'll give him that, said Kilowog. He always has. Never turned down a distress call since he took that sector, said Bitch, who had been on Arisia's shoulder with her, nodding the same. Be that as it may, it seems our young lantern does not understand that he cannot make the journey in time to help save Betrus, said Appa with an almost smug tone. Clarisse, contact him and tell him to return to his sector immediately. While Salak did not particularly like Appa's tone, he could not dispute his logic despite the young man's good intentions. However, before he could make the call, the signal that was Naruto suddenly glowed brighter than it had before, and suddenly the signal of Naruto on the map was traveling at a much faster speed than any of them ever had, leaving the members in the room stunned. "Salak, what just happened?" asked Kilowog before the council. "I don't know how, but his ring's power levels have increased exponentially. The speed he is traveling at is also increased above normal standards for a Green Lantern," he said. "How is that?" Appa began before looking to Ganthet, who looked at the map with rapt attention. "Ganthet, you were explicitly told not to use your Blue Lantern battery prototype unless all members of the council approved it. You will find from Salak that is not the case," said Ganthet with a worried tone as he watched Naruto's signal approach the maelstrom. "He's right, sir. There is no trace whatsoever of Blue Lantern energy surrounding him. However he's doing it, Naruto is enhancing his ring's power on his own," said Salak. Hal and a few of the lanterns that he would never name took a great deal of satisfaction as seeing Appa's flabbergasted expression upon hearing that news. "That does not matter at the moment," said Sade, trying to bring order for the moment and getting everyone back on the present situation. "Clarisse, how long before he reaches Betrus?" she asked. "At his current speed he will be there in under 3 days. 3 days too late, I'm afraid to help," said Salak, being the realist that he had no choice but to give out the facts, even if he hated it. "Then call him back to Oa immediately," demanded Appa. "He must be questioned about." He was soon cut off as the signal of Naruto's ring grew brighter than it did before. So bright that it almost filled the map. Naruto's signal then sped up even more, blowing past the maelstrom and entering frontier space. Naruto's ring power just increased again. Where it once was barely above 400% in increase, it's now above 1000%. Higher than even Hal and Kilowog's levels when they were exposed to Blue Lantern energy. Same with the speed he has now achieved through the energy increase. I dare say he may be approaching ultra warp speeds. At his current rate he will be in Betrus's orbit no sooner than 2 or 3 hours, said Salak, pushing buttons as fast as his 4 hands can, trying to keep up with the current events happening. Everyone in the room was shocked to hear this, but it could not be denied as they saw his bright glowing signature as it flew faster and faster to the endangered planet. "Jordan, you think that what he's doing has something to do with his chakra network or something? I mean, that has to be it, right?" Kilowog whispered. "I don't know, buddy," said Hal. "But something tells me it's more about Naruto, and not what he has in common with his race." "And why would make you say that?" Kilowog asked. "Look at Ganthet," Lyra observed. They did so, and found he seemed to have a knowing smile on his face. "It doesn't matter how he gets there," said Arisha, joining the conversation. "Do you think Naruto will be able to help?" Hal and the rest looked to map, and saw the bright light of the young lantern's signal, and it flew ever closer. "Something tells me, Arisha, that the Kundians and the rest don't know what is about to hit them," said Hal. A sentiment that everyone seemed to silently agree with. Orbit of Betrus. The planet's orbit was alight with the battle. Lasers, constructs, and explosions abounded as the battle raged, and it was not going in the favor of the planet's defenders. Queen Agapo of the Star Sapphires had sent everyone that she could from their core. Almost the entirety had been sent to help equal the force that had come to attack Betrus, as was their duty. The core was dedicated to spreading love throughout the universe, and as such they also were duty-bound to protect it in any worlds under their charge. Since Hal Jordan and Carol Ferris reminded them of this, the Star Sapphires had made a treaty with the Guardians that while there would still be a lantern presence in Frontier space, it would be they that would mainly be in charge of its protection from the day after Aya had supposedly been destroyed. That sense of duty is what leads Sergeant Gallia as she led 4 others in formation and destroyed a fighter squadron that had tried to outflank them from behind. They then managed to work together and formed a construct of a cannon. They then aimed and fired at a destroyer ship's engine. The blast destroyed the engines, while also encasing the ship inside a crystal. This gave them to breathe during the fight. "Report," she called out. "I need status check on what's going on the ground and how many destroyers are left." "Sergeant, we have managed to successfully exhaust their number of fighters and have destroyed half of them on this side," reported the voice of one of her sisters in combat. "But we have only managed to destroy 2 of the destroyers on this side. Queen Island has not been able to send any more ships to send in because of the ground troops, and what remains if she did send on either side of the planet's orbit are destroyed or severely damaged." "Can you give me an estimate on the strength of the ground forces that they sent?" she asked, going into battle again, fending off several fighters with her battle axe constructs, before combining them into a spear and slicing another 3 in half. "For certain the ground forces they sent include at least 200,000 in infantry with tanks to equate that. For certain they have included at least 1 siege tank with firepower to destroy the capital city. Before the scout we sent died," she reported that Ragnar and the 2 Sinestro Corporation members had joined them. The message ended in scream, and Gallia closed her eyes as they had lost another sister. "I only hope our allies on the other side are doing better," she said to herself as the battle raged. Anger filled her as she rallied her squad of Sapphires in wedge formation, taking out 3 cruisers and several other fighters. However, the firepower from the destroyers soon concentrated on her forces, and blew them apart. She and 2 others managed to get a few shots in, but only did minimal damage to the ships, and could not work together to form another cannon construct. The best that they could do was put up shields and tried using defensive fire, but then one of the destroyers fired a torpedo and scored a direct hit on her company. Their shields fell apart and more than half of Gallia's force were killed in the explosion. Gallia herself managed to stay alive along with others of her sisters, but she was wounded badly, and took a page from her estranged love Kilowog's book, and formed min guns on her arms, and a missile launcher on her shoulders and kept firing. She could feel the blood trickling down from her head down her left cheek, but kept fighting alongside her sisters. Keep fighting, sisters. If we die today, we die knowing that we gave our all, for the sake of love and the people who will find peace in it, she screamed. She knew it was false motivation, but there it was as she and sisters continued to fight on. I only wish I could have seen him one more time. Just to make it right, said Gallia sadly. Just as she said that, a bright green light shone from above the 3 remaining destroyers. She and her sisters looked up to see a giant creature appear from the heavens above them. From what she could see, it appeared to be a creature from Earth, a fox if she remembered correctly. But this fox was by far the most menacing thing she had ever seen. It was seemingly made of green fire for starters, and what appeared to be archaic symbols ran through its entire body. And besides its massive stature, behind it waved 9 long tails, and it seemed to have possessed some humanoid features as well. It was the most intimidating thing she had ever seen in her time as a star sapphire. The beast floated upright as it swooped down and with its surprisingly human-like hand, and sliced the first destroyer that attacked them in half, which exploded almost instantly after that. From there the other 2 destroyers turned their attention to the beast, and fired everything they had at it. The beast turned as the energy from their guns hit it. It seemed to grunt in annoyance before turrets of its own suddenly appeared on its body, and intercepted the remaining energy blasts. That was when Gallia noticed that there was someone inside the beast's head. The person inside also was covered in fire, and had strange symbols upon him just like the beast, and what looked like slitted eyes as well. While she had no idea who it was, or for that matter what species, she recognized the symbol on his chest as soon as she saw it. Sisters, she called out. Have no fear. This is the construct of a Green Lantern. He has come to give us aid. Move in to give him support against the ships attacking him. The remaining sapphires moved in formation as they flew at the enemy who just now finished their onslaught, to recharge their weapons and reload. It was then that the large construct, not the lantern, looked down at the approaching star sapphires. Stay back. We've got this, growled the fiery beast. That made stop in their tracks. Hearing this thing talk made her start to think that maybe this lantern had the same power as Larfer's did to make his construct alive, but looking at the form as it turned back and looking at the masked lantern, and noticing that the beast wasn't coming from his ring, instead using the lantern himself as the source made her think there was something else at work here. But her attention went back to their battle as the beast opened its mouth. The lantern inside the head moved his hands in the forward position. From there they seemed to gather energy and formed it into a big dark green ball. When it looked like it couldn't get any larger, the beast fired the ball into one of the destroyers. The ball cut through the ship's shields, as if they were made of paper, slowing the shot down only slightly before it made contact with the ship's hull. The explosion from the impact was so great that Gallia and her sapphires had to shield themselves from the impact wave, but her sister ship wasn't so lucky, and was sent adrift with a fire raging somewhere inside. But the fighting temporarily halted. The being that appeared before them started to approach them. When it got closer, the beast around the Green Lantern disappeared along with the markings and the flames that surrounded his being. By the time the lantern reached them, no signs of the beast remained, save for the bits of debris flying in every direction from what one was a destroyer-class starship. Without the markings, Gallia could see that the Green Lantern who had saved them was young, 19 in Earth years, if he was indeed from Earth. His uniform consisted of some strange light armor design she was not familiar with, spiky blonde hair, and a headband and a mask that covered the lower portion of his face. He was also tall for a human, about 6 feet in length. The young man then made a salute across his chest, fist enclosed. I am Naruto, Green Lantern of Sector 2813 of Guardian Space, here to offer assistance to our allies here in Frontier Space, he introduced. Gallia was the only one who managed to shake herself out of her stupor, and turned to her troops to order them to take out the remaining enemy forces, and recover the survivors from the last destroyer that was now disabled. After they left, she turned to Naruto, and returned the salute. Sergeant Gallia of the Star Sapphires. Glad to see a friendly face, she said. The construct you made seemed different than the others. Yeah, you could say that, said Naruto. In any case, me and my fellow Sapphires owe you our lives, said Gallia, gratefully deciding to table any curiosity she had for the present. We are allies, are we not? The treaty between us means Frontier Space is your guys' jurisdiction, but it doesn't mean we can't help if we can, said Naruto with a smile under his mask. He then turned serious. In any case, I need to know what has been happening since Queen Island sent the distress call, he said. Alia nodded and began to explain. Soon after she sent the message across space was when the Kundians had started sending their forces to the ground to start taking the planet. My sisters and I did the best we could to try to stop as many ground ships from landing as we could. Unfortunately, even with assistance, our forces were too widespread to defend the planet. What assistance? Aside from island frontier lanterns, are barely above recruits with their limited training. Naruto questioned as another fighter was destroyed above them from the remaining fighters in orbit around them. The two Blue Lanterns Corporation members, Razor and Saint Walker. I'll patch you through, she said, using her ring to contact them. Immediately after she did, a violet version of Razor appeared on her ring. Dahlia, thank gods you are still alive. What is the current situation on your side of Betrus? He inquired. Much improved, young Razor. We have our battle well in hand, and will be able to provide you with assistance thanks to this young Green Lantern, she said, moving to introduce Naruto. Naruto, Razor exclaimed. Your timing could not have been better. How did you manage to get here though? Good to see you too, Razor. We will catch up later, after we deal with this, said Naruto, diverting the conversation back to the small war going on. How come you guys haven't already taken care of these ships before I got here? Last I checked, with all the Star Sapphires here in force, and you and Saint Walker here to provide support, should be more than enough to handle this. Normally you would be correct, said Gallia. However, while we may have superior weapons with our rings, the destroyers seem to have been equipped with shields that can withstand some of the energy from our rings, and their weapons seem to be improved. Also, during the initial attack, Ragnar and his two Sinestro allies cut a swath through us as they landed ground forces. Many Star Sapphires died from the attempt to take out as many as they could before the ground ships hit the surface of the planet, Razor explained. How many troops managed to get to the surface, do you think? Asked Naruto. Best guess at least 250,000, with at least 6 tanks and 1 siege tank to take the city with, said Razor with a grim tone. Naruto grumbled at the situation. Those numbers meant that the odds were against Island's troops on the surface. If the planet fell, all that he and the others do in orbit would be for nothing. Are there any Red Lantern ships or Red Lanterns supporting this attack, seeing as Ragnar is one of their own? He asked. This time Gallia answered. No. Prime Magistrate's Ox, Razor and I use that title loosely, sent a message during the attack on how the Red Lanterns have nothing to do with Ragnar, and that he is a traitor to the Reds. Furthermore, he believes that Sinestro offered to help him take Betrus from his sister, which means that he would have a foothold in frontier space just as he tried with your sector, Razor said, recalling Naruto's first mission. Makes sense, said Naruto as he crossed his arms, looking as the Star Sapphires now finished with damaged destroyer fully encased in crystal to prevent the escape of its crew. Alright, he said, uncrossing his arms. Gallia, send your remaining troops to back up Razor and Saint Walker and deal with the rest of these bastards up here. I will go down to the surface and give support to Island and her troops below. By yourself? Young Lantern, I admire your courage, but it is too dangerous to go down there alone, exclaimed the sergeant. Ma'am, you just saw me take out 2 destroyers on my own with my construct, said Naruto, reluctant to call his tailed beast motor Kurama that, but had to keep it as down key as he could given the circumstances. I can handle this. You and Razor need as much firepower as you can against the remaining forces here in space. He's right, Gallia. We've only just managed to take out 1 destroyer. We need your help to take out the others, said Razor. Gallia sighed in exhaustion. They hadn't the time to discuss this further. Very well. You should know, Naruto, that when they finished dropping ground troops, I had a handful of Sapphires head down to the surface to do what you are doing now. They were led by Carol Ferris of Earth. I haven't been able to make contact with them since. Then I need to hurry then, said Naruto, knowing who Carol was and what she meant to Hell. Good luck, Sergeant. He finished saluting, which Gallia nodded to. Naruto made a beeline to the surface. Are you certain that was the correct course to send him there without backup? She questioned the hologram of Razor, who had gone back to fighting the enemy. You haven't seen Naruto in action, Gallia. Trust me, he knows what he's doing. Now some assistance would be most opportune right now, said Razor. Gallia immediately agreed and ordered her sisters to form up and flew towards the other side to turn the tide. She was confident that they could take the ships. She only wished that she could say the same for the surface. Yet after seeing what he could do with that construct, if it was a construct, she had a feeling that the surface was in good hands. Betrus, near the capital city. 2 armies were currently fighting not far from the city that held the seat of power on the planet of Betrus. One was the opposing Kundians, who massed originally of just 50,000, with 3 tanks moving in behind, trailing behind them to begin cannon strikes on the capital itself. The Kundian soldiers were clad in their battle armor, moving and fighting with sinister purpose. Currently they were engaging the brave knights and soldiers of Queen Island, who were of course led by the queen herself, and her finest general Kovac on the ground, while Carol Ferris of Earth, clad in a complete bodysuit, and her 9 other star sapphires fought the animals who were flying in the air with the fighters that came from space to give air support to the ground forces. They were being led by OpNaruto, who Carol was currently fighting. Their ground forces amassed to the number of 30,000, 20,000 in infantry and 10,000 in cavalry, all they could spare given the sudden nature of the attack. When the two armies met, Kovac and his elite guard moved in on their speeders in an attack reminiscent of the cavalry attacks from the days of medieval times on Earth, hoping to destroy at least one of the tanks before they got in range of the city, while also taking out as many of the enemy as they could in the strike. Unfortunately, the Kundians had prepared for that, as Kovac realized too late as he saw a contingent of men on speeders intercepting them. The good thing, though, was Kovac cavalry still outnumbered their speeders. The bad news was as he found out that they still managed to have blasters, and managed to take out a good number of his forces. Even so, he and a small number managed to ride in, use their lances, and managed to destroy one of the tanks before having to pull back to rejoin the army. The attack forced the remaining 2 tanks to move faster, and soon they were firing on the city's shield trying to bring it down. Queen Island saw this as she was fighting with Ears Sinral, better known as Fatality, one of the Sinestro Corps members' greatest fighters. She was doing well, able to parry her strikes from her opponent's yellow spear construct with her sword. She tried to move in by jumping into the air, to strike down her opponent with a 2-handed strike. Fatality managed to block the strike, parry it, and kicked the queen in the stomach, knocking her to the ground. The Queen Lantern managed to roll and get back to her feet, before she saw several projectiles head towards her, forcing her make a shield to stop them. The force of the attack forced her back, sending cracks across her shield construct, which her opponent used to her advantage, when the warrior princess of a dead world slammed the shield, destroying it and knocking Island into a group of soldiers, which she quickly got rid of with her ring. She stood bruised with cuts on her arms and legs, but still defiant. "You fight well for one with only rudimentary training, your majesty," said her adversary, her spear turning into swords in both her hands, the battle waging around them. "For that I offer you to surrender. If you do, you have my word, I will negotiate with the Kundians and your brother for the safety of yourself and for your staff and soldiers." "You don't know my brother then," said Island as she spat out blood from her mouth and wiped it. "He would see me dead for transgressions from his own warped mind. Whatever deal that you made for my world will not be accepted, not by me, and not by my people." It was then that she felt a familiar presence behind her, and moved out of the way just enough to suffer a deep, yet not fatal blow on her ribs. As she backed away holding her bleeding right side, she looked to see her brother Ragnar with shimmering energy blade in hand, and a maniacal grin on his face. Fatality on the other hand stood in shock, and, dare Island thought, anger at this act. "You didn't need to interfere," she called out in rage with her weapons still drawn. Whether or not it was for the act itself, or that her brother was trying to take the kill of another Green Lantern from her, she did not know. "The silent mercenary," he responded in a mocking tone. "You and the Kundians are here to take back my world from her, and are getting an outpost and much money in compensation for it. Do not take my glory from me." Just as he turned his direction toward a Kovac, returning from his unsuccessful raid, joined her as she went to one knee as she held her side with a bandage construct that managed to stop the bleeding. Before Fatality could argue, or have them press on with the attack, there was a sudden noise in the clouds above. Carol, up in the sky with her fellow sapphires, also stopped fighting. The noise soon was made out to be a roar as a green dragon descended upon the ground forces. Following it were 2 other dragons, but these were not green. Instead, one appeared to made of the wind itself, while another made of lightning. The wind dragon moved past the sapphires, and turned into a tornado as it smashed into the fighter squadron they had been fighting. The winds that surrounded the enemy were so furious that the pilots had no chance of course correction, and soon they smashed into themselves of the ground below, destroying their ground forces in their explosions. The lightning dragon moved past the army into the remaining 2 tanks. It passed from one to another, short-circuiting both of the machines of war, while on the way taking out the enemy raiders, before disappearing in a flash. The green one barreled its way into the infantry, leaving the Betrus troops alone while chomping, slicing, and setting the Kundians in fire with its breath, decimating their forces. Regainer tried to strike it down as it made its way to him, but smacked him aside. Before it could finish him, Fatality moved in front of him as the dragon opened its jaws, and threw a grenade construct into it, destroying it instantly. "Fight, you cowards," yelled Ragnar as he saw the remaining Kundians run in terror, seeing these things destroy them. "They have the right idea. We must regroup with OpNaruto and the rest of our forces," said Fatality as she grabbed Ragnar. Meanwhile, OpNaruto managed to correct himself as he was caught in the massive windstorm that the wind dragon had caused. He glanced down to see that the remainder of his allied forces were retreating. Even so, he saw an opportunity, as Carol's back was turned as she looked around and down to figure out what happened, just like everyone else. He then flew at her sword in hand, to bring it down on her head with a maniacal smile as she turned around, too late to stop it. Just before he swung it down, the sociopathic Shidarian glanced to the left, and though he couldn't completely see what it was, he knew it was a green construct. Forgetting about the sapphire for a moment, he quickly made a shield for his left arm, quickly feeling multiple hits on it. He looked at the shield and found what appeared to be the human weapon known as a shuriken, sticking out every few inches, going deep into his construct. He turned to look for where they came from, and saw the blonde Green Lantern who threw them. Seriously? After the little display you just made, you could have shot something a little bigger, he yelled, laughing at the small weapons that were still attached to his shield. Didn't need to, the lantern responded. He then snapped the fingers on his right hand. Suddenly the shuriken glowed for a moment, and before he knew it, OpNaruto's shield was blown apart, and he was sent flying into the ground below, and landed in a large crash. Carol Ferris turned around to see the young man responsible for her rescue. "Thanks for the save," she said with a relieved smile. "No problem," Naruto said. Looking down at the spot, he frowned as he saw the Shidarian get up and join with the rest of his decimated allies. Didn't think that would kill him, but still I hoped it would right then. Bang bears are tough. No matter what core. I've gotten to know that really well, said Kara, looking at OpNaruto retreating. "You'll get another chance though." "Yeah," said Naruto, who then turned the young woman and held out his hand. "Sorry, forgot to introduce myself. Naruto Uzumaki, Green Lantern of Sector 2813 of Guardian Space. You Carol Ferris, right?" Kara was surprised as she shook his hand. "How did you know my name?" "Hell, he can't shut up about you," said Naruto, smiling under his mask as he let go of her hand. Carol blushed as that statement. Even though Naruto knew that the two of them had not been together for a while, he could still see that they loved each other. How else could she still have the ring on her finger otherwise? Carol blush disappeared, however, as she looked to the ground again, but this time on the Betrasan side of the battle. "We need to get down there," she declared as she flew down, followed by her remaining sapphires. Naruto, noticing her change of tone, followed them down. He saw how bad of a state Queen Island's forces were in. There were many dead, but many others injured from the fight, and noticed that Carol's fellow sisters were moving in to help with the wounded. They flew to where Kothak was yelling for a medic, while holding on to a wounded Queen Island. "Hold on, your majesty. Someone will come soon. Will someone get a damn medic? The queen had been injured," he screamed. "Kothak, that is enough. My wound is not as bad as it appears," said the queen, though she was having trouble breathing from the pain of he cut, while pressing on her bandage construct to keep pressure on the wound. "Move out of the way," Naruto suddenly declared as he and Kara landed in front of the general and the queen, and pushed Kothak out of the way as he moved towards the wound. "Who are you?" said Kothak defensively. "He's the guy who just saved our hides," said Carol in his defense as Naruto moved beside her. "Your Majesty, can you hear me?" he asked. Island nodded, though Naruto could see that the pain was making it hard for her to stay conscious. "My name is Naruto. I'm a Green Lantern from Guardian Space. Now I need you to remove your bandage construct, so I can look at your wound." "Can you do that?" he asked. "As she removes the construct, she could bleed to death," General Kothak replied. "Not if I can heal it, but I have to see how bad it is before I can do anything," said Naruto. Island grimaced but managed to concentrate enough to remove the bandage. From there they could see the deep cut that Ragnar had managed to land was bleeding profusely. "We're in luck. The wound is deep, but he managed to miss the kidneys and the other internal organs. I should be able to heal it," said the young ninja. "Good thing, my brother was never good with a blade," said Island with a small but sad smile on her face, but then grimaced from the pain. "Just a moment. You shouldn't talk until I've healed you," said Naruto as his hands started to glow an almost ethereal green as he moved toward the cut. The wound immediately closed and the queen's pain was gone seconds later, and she could instantly breathe easier. A few seconds later, he helped her stand up. "How did you do that?" she asked. "It's an ability of sorts unique to my homeworld," said Naruto cryptically. "The same kind of trick that allowed you to summon dragons of wind and lightning from out of nowhere," Carol guessed with her arms crossed. "What? You mean he did that? I thought the gods themselves had done such a thing." "I mean the green one, I can understand that was a construct, but the other two, how?" said Kothak, flabbergasted as the notion that a person could have such a power. "We have more pressing matters," Naruto reminded them. "Like for the ground troops. I was told by Razor, and by Sapphire Gallia, that at least 250,000 troops landed here supported by 6 tanks and a megatank. I counted only the 50,000 and 3 tanks when I arrived. Unfortunately, your assessment of their numbers was correct." Kothak agreed, returning to his general status. "These troops were used to assess our current strength and numbers. The 50,000 plus the 3 tanks were just one large scouting party used to find out our strengths, our tactics and our weaknesses. And aside from your rival and abilities that you have showcased, I fear that they will regroup and send the rest of their troops and heavy tanks to finish us off." "Wait a minute," Carol said, joining the conversation. "From what Hal told me, Ragnar doesn't strike me as someone smart enough to use that kind of strategy." And OpNaruto, the Sinestro Corps member that you are fighting, doesn't have that level of tactical ability either. He's a vicious son of a bitch and a veteran Corps member, but not a great thinker, said Naruto. No, but Fatality is. That was the warrior I was facing before Ragnar took a shot at me from behind, said Island. Naruto face palmed and dragged his hand over his face and sighing. Great, of course she's here. That would explain it. I've only been a Sapphire for a few years. Could someone explain who this is? Though that name does make me nervous, a little info would be nice, said Carol. Fatality. Her real name is Iris Sunral. Even out here in the frontier we have heard of her prowess in battle. She has a brilliant mind to match, and is said to have the ability to detect the weaknesses of her opponents, and her hatred for the Green Lanterns is said to be very deep, said Kothak. Why, said Carol. Because the Green Lantern made a mistake, and it ended up costing her home planet of Sanchi, said Naruto with a forlorn look, knowing full well which lantern it was but decided not to tell them who. I see, said Island sadly. Doesn't matter what her reasons are though. She's still the enemy, even if we sympathize with her, said Naruto. My other concern is Ragnar. Is he the only red that we have to face, or do we need to worry about Sox and the rest making a move with the Sinestro Corps? No. Prime Magistrate Zilius Sox was the one to warn me of the impending attack, to inform me that my brother was being a fool and that we may do as we please with him. He even promised to send some ships, but it would take time, said the Queen. More than likely after Razor, Saint Walker and the rest do most of the heavy lifting up in space, said Naruto. They all nodded in agreement to that statement. General. My queen, a voice called out. They all turned to see a scout in a damaged smoking but functioning speeder heading towards them. He slid to a stop, got off his speeder and knelt before them. They are coming, he said, out of breath in fear of what he saw. Calm yourself, lad, take a moment to gather your breath, said the general. Sir, the enemy is on the move, he said. When? Said Island in an almost panicked tone. Soon after the battle, the remaining troops from the attack rejoined the main force. I managed to follow them to the rest of their army, but it was already heading this way, he said. Soon the others were starting to murmur and whisper in worry and panic at the thought of the speed that the Kundians were coming and the force they were coming with. Island, while feeling scared herself for her people, did her best to keep cool. How long before they reach our position? She asked. A day, if not less, said the scout. Thank you, soldier, said the queen. He saluted and left them to their thoughts. A day. Our bannermen of the planet won't be able to make in time before they arrive. And we don't have the forces to withstand that on our own, said Kothak. And that's assuming that Fatality and OpNaruto will wait. Any one of them could decimate our forces that don't have rings, said Carol. Naruto stood silent while the other three were conversing over how to deal with the crisis, arms crossed and thinking. Kurama, you thinking what I'm thinking? He asked his old friend and partner. Kid, I'm inside your head. Of course I know what you're thinking. And, he asked. I say, what are you waiting for? Tell them so we can end this thing, said Kurama, anxious for his partner to get into battle once more. Naruto smirked at that. Truth be told, he was tired of standing as soon as he heard the army's approach. Your Majesty, if I may, he said out loud. His voice stopped their arguing of what to do to listen to their new ally. Kothak, take as many warriors as you can and have them wait at the city gates. Those men, along with the city's defenses, should be able to ward off any forces that come to you. Carol, you and the Queen take to the skies with what remains of your squadron of Sapphires. You should be able to handle any fighters or aircraft that get past our friends in space, or the remaining forces here on the surface that get past, said Naruto, handing out his plan. Wait, said Island. That sounds like a sound plan, but what you mean when you say get past? By what? That's easy, Your Majesty, said Naruto, moving in front of them with his back to them. He turned his head to them. By me? I'm going to go intercept them before they get here, said Naruto. Wait a minute, yelled Carol. You know the force that their army has, and also the skills and abilities of the two Sinestro Corps members. You can't face that alone. Carol, Fairest of Earth, the masked lantern said calmly, turning his head to her. With all due respect, I have faced far worse odds before and after I got this ring, said Naruto. Then without another word he jumped and flew off towards the approaching army. Damn it. Never thought I would meet someone crazier than hell, said Carol, getting ready to go after him. Ms. Fairest, don't, said the Queen, stopping the Star Sapphire. As much as I may dislike it, at the very least with his plan we may have a chance to defend the planet. At the very least he may be able to buy time for our world's bannermen to arrive with their men, and we may hold Betrus. The Queen Island, we can't just leave him out there to die. At least let me send some of my group of Sapphires to provide backup, said Carol. Let him go with his plan, said Kothak, suddenly getting both ladies' attention. Though I may have no knowledge when it comes to lanterns, I know warriors, and though young he may be, when I saw his eyes for the first time, when he halted, Your Highness, I saw the eyes of a battle-tested veteran. So, believe me when I say that perhaps that army is the one who will need assistance, not the Green Lantern. Carol still looked like she wanted to protest, but she could see that the queen's and the general's minds were made up. So, they did as Naruto suggested, and moved the wounded, and rallied the rest of the troops towards the capital city. And while she did have doubts, she remembered the display they saw earlier. And her gut was telling her that Kothak would be correct. 1,000 miles from the capital, OpNaruto stood with his commander ear, and the idiot Prince Ragnar as he finished bandaging his now broken arm. "Damn son of a bitch is gonna pay for this," he declared. "You should be fortunate that it didn't get blown off when he threw those constructs at your shield, since you were stupid enough not to realize that they would explode." Fatality said in a distasteful tone at her subordinate as she observed the movement of the troops and the tanks behind them with a neutral look. "Don't start with me, Fatality, I am not in the mood," said the Shidarian, still suffering pain from the exploding shuriken. "Forget that," declared Regainer, pushing past him. "Why are we not moving ahead of the army? We three should be enough to destroy Island and her cohorts, including the other Green Lantern that appeared. Because we need to make sure that the rest of the Kundians stay in formation." After the display, that of our new opponent, the remnants of our scouting force began talking with the rest of the troops. Already rumors spread like wildfire. "They are keeping it suppressed, but there is a notion of fear among them now," she observed. "You can't know that for certain," Ragnar objected. Suddenly Fatality turned and looked at him with both annoyance and disgust. "You should not doubt my ability to sense the weakness in others, boy. For instance, I can sense your inability to let anything, never mind a whole planet. You were the one who called us and ran from your red brethren to try and make a play for Betrus. Without us you would not have even gotten this far," said the warrior princess. "You can't talk to me in that fashion. I am the true ruler of Betrus," Ragnar declared. He then found himself held in the air by the throat from Mira's bare hand. He tried to use his ring, but she squeezed tighter on his throat that he had trouble breathing, and thus could not focus his rage. "You're no king, boy. If it were up to me, I would gut you here and now," she said in anger. She then dropped him on his ass. "The only reason I don't is because of the promise you made to us, that we would have a foothold in frontier space with Betrus, and the worlds under its rule. Don't forget that." She then turned back to the army. And though she would never admit it, she was disgusted with the company she had been keeping since joining Sinestro, and of their current mission, to take a world and its sister planets under the Kundian and Sinestro core control, since they had now become partners. Especially since the Queen had proven herself a just and wise ruler. She shook head to remove those thoughts. "This is for vengeance against my people. Those that the Green Lantern could not save. I will make them all pay for what happened," she thought to herself. The same thought she always had when she had doubts. A part of her wondered if this was all this misery and death was worth it. And was it for vengeance, or to silence something else? "Fatality," OpNaruto called out, shaking her from her thoughts. He was using a binocular construct and pointing at the sky ahead of the army. She created one of her own, and saw a green figure flying towards them. "He's coming alone," she stated with curiosity. "Green boy, it's payback time," said the sadistic Shidarian. "Indeed," said Ragnar. "Our tanks will slaughter him before he even makes it above the infantry." Fatality would have agreed with their assessment if she did not see this young man decimate their initial attack the way that he did, for she had no doubt that somehow those wind and lightning dragons came from him just the same as the green constructive one. And she still heard nothing from the battle above the skies with the Kundian destroyer groups. From that silence she knew that he had partook in that battle as well. All this told her that unless they took the capital city and took the planet, then this would be a failed endeavor, and all this unnecessary death of Betrus's people was for nothing. Their thoughts were interrupted as the mysterious new player in this battle today, as he stopped just short of the infantry, and hovered just outside of the cannon's range as the army continued to move forward. She then saw him raise his ring hand, as if to attack, only it didn't seem like he was using it other than to fly. "Send what's left of our fighter escort to take him out now," she ordered Ragnar. "Why? Our army will reach him within a few moments. There is no need to rush his end," said the traitorous Red. Before she could admonish him for his arrogance, she realized it was too late as she suddenly felt a gust of wind start to build up. She looked to see, the Green Lantern was the source, as he seemed to gather wind around him, which he used to send a large wave of wind that appeared to flow directly from his hand in a slicing motion. Not only was it powerful, but surprisingly precise as he directed it to the 4 tanks behind the 200,000 Kundian troopers. The strength of it was so great that it sliced the tanks in half, while at the same time making the troops fall like dominoes. To top it off, he then sent several hundred Senbone constructs that took out at least 500 of the now panic-stricken forces' front line, all the while flying towards them once again, before landing and running at them. Fatality and her cohorts watched in horror at the devastation of their forces, their binoculars long gone as they could now see everything in close enough distance. The sole survivor of Sanchi looked at the Green Lantern with keen eyes and pondered why he was moving toward the enemy with the army's weapons having no effect on him as he either dodged or was shielded from the laser fire and missiles. The answer came as he got closer and formed what looked like a T-hand sign with his hands. Instantly after he did that, 2,000 puffs of smoke appeared. What came out was now 2,000 version of the same lantern. The original then made his sword construct as he and they crashed into the army. "Who the fuck is this guy?" said Rometru, looking down at the carnage of the battle as the Green Lantern and his clones were decimating their army. Whether it was from the original's sword slashing or the breaking of bones and helmets by the clones, blood was being spilled all over the battlefield. Those Kundians were lucky if they managed to kill one, but it just disappeared in a puff of smoke before being killed. It was sure chaos. Fatality then looked away to a dumbfounded Ragnar and grabbed a hold of him from the front of his jacket. "Get the fighters into the air now, and call the siege tank from the rear to move in where the tanks were," she said. Ragnar nodded, then looked down in anger at seeing his hopes to rule Betrus being destroyed by this outsider, before moving to his earpiece to call for the remaining fighters and the large siege weapon. "The siege tank was meant to take out the shields in the capital," said Rometru. "Doesn't matter now. This battle is lost. The best we can hope for is to kill this lantern now, and hope that alone can appease the Kundians and Sinestro," said Fatality with almost relief in her voice. "The fighters will draw him out of hiding. The weakness in this technique of his, and don't ask me how he is doing it, because I don't know, is that if we kill the caster then the technique dies with him. So, then the tank will blow his ass out of existence then," said Rometru, his mood picking up. "And if not, we finish the job ourselves, and get off this planet, and send a distress call to the core." Fatality nodded. Thankfully Rometru could pick things up if explained. She then noticed that Ragnar was now gone. "That little shit," she thought to herself, and looked at the Shidarian, and he had the same thought and flew off into the battlefield knowing where he was going. Meanwhile Naruto had sliced through another 3 enemies using the vacuum blade technique with his ring. He then saw multiple missiles heading towards him, but easily destroyed them with another wind scythe jutsu like he did before. He leapt into the air, while throwing his construct, letting it disappear, and made several hand signs. "Wine style, air cannon jutsu," he called out with his hands forward, and fired several compressed air projectiles that destroyed several thousand troops, sending them flying into the air. He then hovered above several feet in the air looking at battle. He saw his clones punch, kick, use several jutsu of both wind and lightning as they leveled the enemy into dust. He himself had done the same, but since he had the ring he used swords, senbone, kunai, halive and senbone grenades. Even though the battle was only half over, he knew that this days was theirs. "Kid, this was too easy. You didn't even need to use shadow clones on these assholes," said Kurama. "It was more efficient than having to do it all on my own," Naruto reasoned as he heard the sound of fighters coming in from the sky. "More lambs to the slaughter. Watch your back, though they may attempt final bold maneuver, if nothing else to try, and kill you, before leaving in a heap," Kurama warned, to which Naruto nodded too. He turned to one of his clones who had a still living Kundian on his knee, surrendering. "Go get him, boss, we got these assholes," said the clone. Naruto wasted no time then as he flew to meet them. The fighters saw him, and immediately opened fire. He dodged and weaved through the lasers they shot at him with, and fired some bolts of his own from the ring. With deadly accuracy he blew 2 fighters into oblivion, and fired more volleys. "In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Remember that, you stinking bastards," said Naruto as he continued firing, and destroying the last of the fighters. "Kid, to your left on the ground," Kurama called out as Naruto fired his last 2 shots before turning to see the ground below. What was left of the army of the rampaging Kundians moved back to their transports to get away from his clones parted when the siege tank rolled in. It even rolled on its own numbers to get in range. "Well shit," said Naruto as he prepared for the onslaught that the tank would bring. On cue it fired its large energy beam straight at him. He put a shield up, and it managed to block the attack, but it forced him further into the sky. "You wanted a challenge," Naruto said to his partner as he gritted with effort to hold the shield. He already saw cracks starting to form. "Kid, you better do something, cause your construct will break, or you will lose power before that cannon loses energy," Kurama advised. It was then Naruto got one of his crazy ideas. "Kurama, do you remember the story about Deacon Kilowog's predecessor and how he took down that tank?" he asked. I wouldn't use him as a reference," said Kurama, knowing what happened to him. "Well, he was us, was he?" Naruto questioned. He didn't need an answer as he felt the fox smile at that. After reinforcing his shield he started flying directly toward the tank. As he moved past to the halfway point he used his left hand and created a Rasengan from it. He channeled lightning chakra into it, and it soon became a swirling ball of lightning that crackled and shook with energy. When he was close enough to see the nozzle of the cannon he moved the shield aside and shoved it in. "Lightning style, Rasengan," he shouted as he did this. The beam stopped as the jutsu traveled into the nozzle, sending shocks of the lightning throughout the massive siege weapon. The pilot inside turned to bacon as he was fried from the attack, and then the tank itself blew up in a massive explosion with Naruto just a few feet away from the blast. The smoke from the explosion soon cleared with Naruto in the center of the crater still standing, although a little singed, but before he could get his bearings Ragnar suddenly appeared with a red sword shimmering in his hands from his power ring. "You ruined everything." Betrus was meant to mine this day. He yelled swinging, but the young lantern was easily dodging every one of his clumsy swings. This was supposed to be mine. He was interrupted when Naruto grabbed the sword's blade with both hands. He tossed it aside, moved forward, and slammed his elbow into the X-Red's face, breaking his nose. Blood protruded from his nose as he tried to stay conscious, only to be then finally beaten with a right liver shot, and was sent spiraling with a spinning left kick that knocked him out cold as he landed hard on the ground. Naruto didn't have time to celebrate as missiles were fired at him from Rometru's ring. He flipped and jumped to make most of them miss, while sending 2 of them right back at the Shidarian psychopath, who had to jump out of the way of them, and quickly had to put but a barrier up, as the ninja ran towards him and rammed a Rasengan into his shield. The barrier shattered on impact and the force sent Rometru flying into the wall of the crater, although he managed to protect his fractured arm, that was still in the bandage construct. Unfortunately, Naruto was too late as he turned, and saw Fatality spear him through the gut. With a yell she jumped with him still on the spear end and pinned to a spot, not so far away from Rometru. Still clutching his wounded arm, the Shidarian found himself laughing as they heard all the clones disappear in puffs of smoke like Fatality said they would. "You know, for all the trouble this bastard caused us to make this mission go Fuber, it seems almost too easy how we managed to bring him down." "Not so much of a fight, huh?" he said cockily. That also made her curious as well. "Normally I don't agree, but he has a point," said Fatality as she twisted the spear construct in his gut as Naruto held it with both hands to try and stop her. "I was actually expecting a much tougher fight." To both of their surprises, Naruto just chuckled as he raised his head. "Oh, the fight hasn't started yet. I'm just stalling." Fatality then noticed 2 things. The ring on his hand disappeared just like a construct would, and then the young man started to glow. They had just managed to get their shields up before he blew up in their faces, and sent them flying, landing a few feet away. They both got up, though Fatality managed to get up faster than her partner as he stood up next to her. "What the hell? The little shit killed himself before I could take his head off," he said in indignation. "No, he wasn't there to begin with," said Fatality. She turned and saw that there was a wire circling around his neck. Next thing she knew, lightning traveled along it, and Rometru was soon convulsing, as if he had a seizure and was being electrocuted with light coming from his body bright enough that she had to shield her eyes. When it was done, all that was left of him was a burnt corpse that looked like him, and a ring on his finger, left to find another host. She then turned and followed the wire to the Green Lantern, that they thought they killed, who seemed to shimmer into existence. He stood there as the wire construct disappeared. "You tricked us," said Fatality. "Yes, I did," said Naruto. "After the explosion you cloaked yourself using your ring, and created another one of your clones to replace you. After he was stabbed, your other clones knew it to be the signal to disappear, and all you had to do was wait for your moment to take out one of us. All the while using said clone to take out Ragnar," she deduced. "I figured you would be the smart one of the bunch," said Naruto. "This battle is over. The Kundians are beaten. Not just here on the ground, but I imagine in space as well. Surrender and the Sapphires will show mercy." Fatality readied her spear. "I will never submit to a Green Lantern." "Because of what happened to Zanshi?" he asked. She gave him a surprised look when he said her planet's name. "Yes, I know you are Princess here. I know what happened to your homeworld," said Naruto sadly. "You don't call me that. To you and the rest of your cursed core I am Fatality. And I will not rest until I see you, John, and the rest fall before me," she declared, pointing her spear at him. "And will that help your conscience?" "Will all this help you, in quelling the voices in your head?" said Naruto. "I have no remorse for those who side with you," she said, though Naruto could tell a hint of doubt that she was trying to hide. "Betrus is in the frontier. They had nothing to do with the core as a whole." "You just attacked them, because their queen is one of us?" Naruto asked. "No. Sinestro ordered it," she explained. "And let me guess, he said he would help you kill John Stewart. Make all the lanterns pay for a stupid rookie mistake that he made when he was starting out. Even though we both know he did everything he could at the time," said Naruto. "Shut up. You know nothing," said Fatality as she had enough of her words and charged in. Naruto then quickly made a trident construct and blocked the strike that was made to the side. He then shrugged it off, making her twist and hold the spear across her shoulders. Naruto also got into his stance, crouched and ready to strike. "I hit close to the truth, didn't I?" he inquired with a smirk under his mask. Fatality then moved forward and made a stab at him, which he blocked. From there it turned to a duel of clashing staffs as they twirled their weapons, which each stab, pivot and slice at each other with neither gaining ground. "Kurama, I think my initial suspicions were right. Her anger isn't solely on John. She's angry about something else," he said to his partner as he dodged a kick and another stab of her spear as sparks flew from the attack. Not just anger. I'm sensing guilt from her as well. That is the source. She feels guilty for being the sole survivor of her world. It's blocked off her emotions. You need to focus on that. Be careful though, she's tough, said Kurama. The two warriors continued their onslaught on each other until they locked their weapons and pushed each other back. From their Fatality, dropped the spear end of her weapon and taped it on her foot to try and do an upper slash on his chin. He dodged it but could not block the kick to his abdomen. It knocked some wind out of him, but he recovered enough to duck under her swing, turning the trident he'd been using into a warhammer, and slammed it into her, sending at least 10 feet away before she recovered. What's really the problem here? He asked, using her real name. We know it's not John that is the real cause of your issues. It isn't that makes you go into battling every Green Lantern you see. That's just the excuse. So, what is it really? Shut up, she screamed as she threw her spear at him in frustration. He deflected it and decided to end it right there, and now changing his hammer into a scythe and moving right at her. She made another spear and ducked his slice, but didn't anticipate him slicing under her. It caught the middle of her weapon and managed to launch her into the air and fire a ring blast at her, sending her out of the crater. He then flew out as she landed on the ground with a thud and skidded across the field of dead and wounded Kandians. Naruto landed just a few feet in front of her. She spat out blood, and faster than he anticipated she drew out two short blades and sliced at him with the one in her right hand. He moved to safety, but she managed to clip his cheek. He rubbed the cut and made two kunai. The two then clashed again with more dazzling speed, going to close corners, and sparks really began to fly from their clashing blades. Naruto though made sure that was going to be the only cut she had, as he turned out to be faster than her, and managed to get through her defenses and land two cuts on her cheeks, a cut to the rib section, and several on her legs. Nothing fatal as she managed to keep it from getting there, but they still must have hurt her. And yet she still kept going. For almost an hour they went at it. Naruto however could see that she was getting fatigued by her heavy breathing. Her attacks got slower as he pushed away with his hand, dropping one of his kunai as she made a misstep from exhaustion. This to his eyes confirmed what he was thinking. He then ducked under her latest strike and landed a kunai deep into her shoulder, the pain making her go to her knees and dropping her weapons. Naruto then just stood there, catching his own breath and looking at her. She then looked up at him. What are you waiting for? Finish me. Kill me, she called out. But it was in a tone that was hinted at desperation. She's begging me to do it, he thought. However, he instead decided to kneel in front of her so they could talk face to face. Killing you won't bring your people back, he said. That was the core of it. Soon after that, her eyes started to tear. Please, let me join my people. I can't take this anymore. Besides, I led this mission. I caused all this death and destruction that led to this under the banner of Sinestro. I deserve it. Which is why I'm not going to do it. For one thing, that is the easy way out. Since you lead this attack, you have to take responsibility for it. Besides, you are the last of your kind. I wouldn't be responsible for killing off a race. He then took a breath. What happened to your world was a tragedy. And I know it has been lonely for you. But you need to let go of this anger you have, as well as the guilt that has made it so. Look at where it's led you. He then motioned to the area of dead around him. She looked and could not deny that in her madness she could not see how many people were being killed for something that they had no part in. This path you are on has to change course. And I know you don't think you deserve or even need it, but you are going to get a chance to do something good, he said. He moved behind her and struck her in the back of her neck, knocking her out, but catching her before she fell to the ground, and then picked her up and over his left shoulder. You sure about this, kid? Said Kurama. She doesn't need to die. Not like OpNaruto. She has the potential to be better. She just needs to lose her anger, and I think I know just the people who can do that, Naruto responded. He then flew over the crater and found Ragnar still on the ground, unconscious. Tempting though it was, he could not just leave him lying on the floor. So, he used his ring to put in and a bubble and flew back to the capital. The battle was over. Then flashback. The rest of the report followed, that soon after the battle Naruto returned to the capital city, and from their island declared that the battle had been won, and Betrus saved once again from destruction. After Naruto had ended, the ground army prime magistrates Silas Sox and Bleeze, his second in command, arrived with some cruisers, and in turn, forced the other two destroyers to surrender. The Kandians were allowed to take their dead and wounded on board their ships, and jumped back to their homeworld with the warning to not try this stunt again anytime soon, and to relay the same message to Sinestro and his corps. As for Ragnar and Fatality, their fates could not be any different. Silas himself came to Betrus to further add that he did not order Ragnar to attack her home planet. And then right there in front of them all stripped him of his ring. The fallen prince screamed in pain but would live. It was clear that Silas was trying to save face, but Naruto had stated that he was telling the truth. In either case, he just wanted the ring off the idiot's hand and to someone else more competent. Fatality, under Naruto's suggestion, was to be placed with the star sapphires on Xamarin for rehabilitation. Shockingly enough, Naruto had actually asked them to see if there was a way to help them. The Guardians, Appa especially, would be against it, but since frontier space was sapphire territory, there was nothing they could do about it. Hal smiled at that part. As for Naruto himself, Carol had been kind enough to open a portal that would take him back to Guardian space. Thanks to the upgrade that Ayu made on their tech, they could now open a portal without there needing to be a loved one involved. The island had asked if he wanted to stay as they mourned, but also celebrated their victory, but Naruto just wanted to go home, which they all understood. So, he left after saying his farewells to Razor, getting a brief but fond introduction to Saint Walker, and saying his farewells, and thanks to Gallia and Carol he was immediately back to Oa. From there the Guardians wanted to interrogate Naruto as to how he managed to get to frontier space, never mind to Betrus in the time that he did. He however said nothing on how he managed it, and even pointed out that, if he hadn't done what he did, then the planet would have fallen, and the Sinestro Corps and the Kundians would now have Betrus and its outlying planets under their thumb. Thankfully more than half the Corps agreed, and were ready to step up to his defense, which prompted both Ganthet and Sade to convince them to drop it for now. Still, Ganthet had advised that Hal talk to the Justice League about letting another Green Lantern come to Earth. Naruto needed to be off Oa for a while. He already talked with Sade to convince the council that it was time that Naruto stretch his wings on Earth. He knew Ganthet would be down on Ajnin to help convince Naruto of the needed change. Hal agreed readily, and not just because of the council trying to find out more about the young man. He went to Ferris Fields to check on her. He always did ever since she took the ring on a permanent basis. Not that he needed to, she turned into a capable sapphire. It's just that he loved her. If he could ever get his head out of his ass to just tell her, and actually make a real effort of their relationship. It was when she talked about Naruto that made the decision for him. Hal, she began in her office. As a star sapphire, I can look into someone's heart and see things about a person that I would not be able to otherwise, as you know already. When I shook his hand as he left, I saw that young man's heart. It had the warmest feel that I've ever felt from someone in a very long time. But underneath that light, that warmth, I felt a sort of sadness about him. And that's something no one should have, especially not him. That on top of everything else is why he was above Ajnin right now. He pointed to his ring and made the call to Lady Tsunade. The call that would once again put Naruto Uzumaki's life on a whole new course. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want a next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.